The 2023 state legislative session leaned towards some of the most conservative issues in the political spectrum. School vouchers, immigration, abortion, and gun rights were among the many issues that were debated during the course of the 60 days session in Tallahassee. What impact will it have on you? We'll discuss that with today's guests. The session also brought about one of the largest budgets the state of Florida has ever seen and voted out, including a bill worth billions of dollars for everything from mental health to environmental projects to assisting those most in need. We'll hear about some of those funds and how they're making their way to Palm Beach County. All this and more when we're joined with State Senator Tina Polsky on this edition of Politically Speaking. Welcome back. I'm Todd Bonlarron, host of Politically Speaking. We are joined here in the office of State Senator Tina Polsky for this edition. Senator Polsky, thanks for welcoming us into your office today.
Thanks for coming. Happy to have you.
And it's good to have you back from Tallahassee from the 2023 session. I think one of the things that we saw this legislative session was an agenda that mirrored one of the most conservative that we've seen really in the nation. And I guess considering the makeup of some of the leadership in the House, the Senate, the governor's office, one might expect that an agenda of that level would come forward. Is that how you saw the framework of this legislative session, or did you see it somewhat differently than that?
It definitely was the most conservative, but I don't even think that's the right word. I just think right-wing and extreme. There was so much that happened. Normally, this is my 5th year in the legislature. Normally there would be like one major topic that we'd really dive into. This year we tackled every controversial subject you can imagine. And the problem with that is it takes up so much time and effort and energy and emotion from citizens who come to testify, from all of us in committees and debating on the floor, that we didn't get to a lot of the important kitchen table issues that Floridians really need us to work on. We barely did anything on property insurance during the regular session. Which is, one of the biggest complaints that we have from our constituents. But, to focus on absolutely overhauling the public education system, taking away a woman's right to choose, 5 bills against the LGBTQ community, changes to the election system, changes to immigration, changes to higher education. It's been a lot to take in, and almost like it was purposefully so much that we couldn't really figure out our plan of attack. It was really overwhelming, and I think people were surprised by how many different issues were tackled in this session.
So let's dive into a couple of those issues a little more deeply. I mean, this year we saw some significant changes for parents and students in the form of a new student voucher program in the state of Florida. How far did the legislature go in changing the laws that already existed for using student vouchers in the state?
They really went all the way into a complete potential privatization and use of taxpayer money for any kind of schooling that someone wants. And this really is the end result of the making, they call it school choice, but Jeb Bush started this many years ago, and this is the final result. Palm Beach County always had a great school system, a public school system, A-rated school district. I think we have an excellent relationship with our school board members, and our county, I think, really does it right. Some other counties are not the same. And as a result, Tallahassee really loves to attack school boards and public school districts. And it's hard because we have such a good one. And we know to those watching who love our schools, and every time there's a vote for giving money back to the schools, it's approved overwhelmingly. So I know how we feel about it. So it's very hard to know that it's going to be harder to run those public schools in Palm Beach County as a result of this bill. We always had great school choice. You can go to charter schools, you can go to magnet schools, programs. My children participated in specialty programs at special schools. So it really was great. And there was the ability for certain students, especially ones with special needs, to get a voucher and go to a school that suited them. I don't really have too much of a problem with that. What I have a problem with is now any student can go to any of the private schools that accept them. Not all schools accept them. They can also take the money and homeschool or school in some kind of pod situation. And so you're taking away money from the public schools, who are constitutionally required to educate our children, to keep their doors open with the right number of teachers and custodians and administrative staff and air conditioning for the students, and yet students can come and go kind of at will. You can even have students come for one class and they can still take money away. So how the public school is going to plan their budgets and manage what they need to do when they are now competing against any other kind of school, and the public schools have so many more regulations than the others do.
You know, over the past couple of years, we've seen some changes in immigration and immigration laws in the state of Florida. Specifically, it seems like the state has gotten into the issue of even transporting immigrants from other states outside of Florida to other states from there. How did this year's immigration bill contribute to perpetuating those kinds of actions? And what can businesses expect to see from the immigration bill that passed this year?
So, first of all, the state really has no business running immigration bills. It's a federal issue. We can debate all day long if our federal government over the last many decades has managed the immigration issue. We know there's problems, but having an individual state create rules whereby they don't accept other states' driver's licenses of immigrants. They are now requiring employers, if you have 25 or more, to use an e-verify system. And if someone goes to an emergency room, they have to say their citizenship status, which is going to keep people away. But the real problem with this bill is that undocumented immigrants are a fact of life in our state and elsewhere. And they do work that American citizens just don't want to do. And when we see the price of agriculture rising and the price of putting on a roof and construction, because we don't have the workers that we traditionally have been using, even hurricane cleanup on the West Coast, we're really going to be sorry that this bill is in place. And in fact, some of my Republican colleagues who voted for the bill have spoken out against the bill, saying to the immigrant community, please don't leave, we need you. But the worst part of the bill is another $12 million that went to the governor to ship people from one state to another, having nothing to do with Florida. And he just did it from Texas to Sacramento, California. These people never step foot in the state of Florida, and taxpayers are paying for that.
Senator, one of the issues that I've heard you express some disappointment about was the issue of abortion and the abortion legislation that passed this session. What do you expect the impacts of that bill will be on women in the state of Florida?
We've already seen some terrible impacts. There are women who are in medical need and are not getting the care that they need because the doctors, understandably, are concerned about performing an abortion on someone who needs it after the 15 weeks, which is the law now, but 6 weeks is coming very soon. And they are in jeopardy of their license and even criminal charges if they perform an abortion after 15 weeks. It is very scary for these women. There have been some articles in our area about women who got very sick and they were turned away and told, come back when you're sicker. And you know what's a terrible result of this? Some women are losing their ability to have children in the future. They have to have hysterectomies because there's so much damage to their system because they're not having an abortion on a timely basis when there's something very wrong with the fetus or something very wrong with them. I think the other effect is women, young women, are not going to come to the state. I'm very concerned for economic development purposes. I'm very concerned for our state colleges and universities that young women from across the country are not going to want to come here, or they're going to want to leave. And, you know, for people who can afford to go to the Northeast to get an abortion if they need one, then they will. But like so many other things, this will affect the poorest of the women in our our state.
A lot of impacts from a lot of big bills this legislative session. If you just hold for a few minutes, I want to come right back. Join us. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the elections legislation that passed this year, in addition to some of the personal issues that Senator Polsky was working on for you, the residents of Palm Beach County. We'll be right back.
To further the introductions for Palm Beach County Days in the gallery, please stand. We have Mayor Greg Weiss, Commissioner Maria Marino, Commissioner Mac Bernard, Commissioner Sarah Baxter, Commissioner Marcy Woodward, Commissioner Michael Barnett, and County Administrator Virginia Baker. And that's the entire commission, so congrats to all of you for coming. Thank you so much for being here.
Welcome back to this edition of Politically Speaking. I'm Todd Bonlarron here in the office of State Senator Tina Polsky. Senator Polsky, you serve on the Ethics and Elections Committee in Tallahassee, and there was yet another elections bill that came before the legislature this year that will have some changes to what people can expect in the next upcoming elections. What are some of those changes that you saw in that legislation, and what kind of impacts do you think that those will have on the voters as we enter future elections?
So I think it's important to talk about a bill from last year as well as the bill from this year, because as we have an election coming up the following year, it's important to talk about it. Last year, there was in the large elections bill a restriction on vote by mail that it's only available every 2 years. So I want everybody who's watching to make sure to check your status, and you need to renew your vote by mail request either online. You can call the Palm Beach Supervisor of Elections or go into any of the offices, and you must renew. If you haven't done that since you voted in November 22, then you are required to do that. So just a note to everyone. That was from last year. This year, the biggest negative of the bill, there's a lot of technical changes that I think frankly affect the Supervisor of Elections offices much more than us. But the biggest issue is for third-party voter registrations. If you ever go out to an event or even at the supermarket and you see outside League of Women Voters or other groups who are collecting voter registrations, helping people register to vote, and then they take them in and the person becomes registered, they put a lot more restrictions on that. They made it very uncomfortable for those organizations. The fines for making any kind of mistakes increased dramatically. They have to register and pay fees every single year now. There's just kind of a distrust of these community organizations that have been doing great work. I mean, I think everyone can agree the League of Women Voters, for example, just does great nonpartisan, impartial work to help people vote, which is really the important thing. So now it's just making it much harder on them, and the risk to them legally, criminally, financially is just much greater. And the effect of that is on kind of, once again, our low-income communities where they go out and they really help people to register who can't do it on their own. There just won't be as much availability as there used to be.
Senator, I want to focus a little bit on some of the bills that were on your personal legislative agenda this year, and you had a number of them. One that passed the legislature this year focused on those where we've seen a lot of deaths related to fentanyl-laced drugs. And you had a controlled substance testing bill. Maybe you can share some of the components of that bill, why you think it was important for you to push that during this legislative session.
Sure. So fentanyl is this inexpensive, widely available, incredibly dangerous drug that is used, basically laced into other drugs. It could be marijuana, it could be cocaine, but it could also be like a Xanax, kind of what is normally a prescription pill that someone gets off the street. So we hear all these accidental fentanyl overdoses, not necessarily people who are drug users, but maybe one time used something that came from the street that was laced with fentanyl, and the tiniest amount, like a grain of salt, can kill someone. So there's no way to know if there's fentanyl in something that you're taking, because fentanyl testing strips, which exist, are considered drug paraphernalia and are illegal. So they're not sold in stores and you can't easily get them. My bill decriminalized those test strips so that they can be available in time when the bill did pass both chambers, and we're just awaiting the governor's signature. So I suspect it will be signed. It's a really important harm reduction measure, and it will save people's lives.
Senator, the issue of mental health has been one that's been discussed quite often with the legislature. You filed a bill this year that would have helped to backfill some of the openings in some of these mental health care professional positions. It didn't get a lot of traction this session. Why do you think that didn't move forward, and what were you hoping to accomplish with the filing of this legislation?
So we meet with so many different agencies across the county and the state, and one thing that I heard from a lot of folks is that there are just not enough people who work in the mental health field for all the need that we have, and we hear so much about terrible needs that we have. And I don't think there's even enough private professionals. You know, when you look at a network, your healthcare, and you can't find enough doctors to help. So in order to increase the number of mental health professionals in our state, I suggested a scholarship or a loan reimbursement program, which does exist for some other medical fields, so I'm not reinventing the wheel. I think it's a great idea, and I do think we're going to get a lot further next year. Sometimes when you introduce something the first year, you just have to let the idea simmer. It takes some time, but I think the reason this particular one didn't move is that it has to also be accounted for in the budget. And so next year I'm going to go at it in a different manner to really figure out the amount of money it would cost, and maybe it needs to be two bills, a budget bill and a policy bill. But I have Republican support, bipartisan support from some of the policy chiefs and committee chair people in those areas, and we're going to work really hard on it. It's going to be a priority for next year.
This year, the issue of guns and relaxing restrictions on documentation needed for the carry of certain weapons passed the legislative session. But you also filed a bill that would have been a safe gun storage legislation. How do you contrast both the legislation that passed and your bill that you filed this year, and what would have been the difference had yours been passed this year?
So for 5 years, I have filed a bill that would make storage of guns safer. We do have a law on the books, but it has no teeth to it, and it's really not enforced. So so many of the school shootings and terrible events we have come from someone taking a gun from the home. And so had those guns been stored safely where no one could get their hands on it except the rightful owner, we could have saved a lot of lives. So I'm trying to propose that. It doesn't take away anyone's right to own a gun. I just don't understand why this isn't viewed as the right thing for us to do to keep all of our citizens safe. But at the same time, rather than following a bill like mine or some of the many other gun safety legislation bills that are proposed, they decided to go in the other direction, which is to make guns more readily and easily available, because people can carry them on their person or in their car without any kind of permit, without any kind of enhanced background check, or without any kind of training. And so now anyone can carry a gun. You still need a background check to purchase a gun, but there's many other ways people get guns, and we did absolutely nothing to help gun safety. Rather, we've increased the number of people who have guns, and I'm very concerned about that.
One thing that the legislature did do was appropriate a lot of money, $116+ billion. We're going to hold that thought, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific appropriation projects that Senator Polsky worked on that will be coming back right here in Palm Beach County. Stick around. We'll be right back on this edition of Politically Speaking. Welcome back to this edition of Politically Speaking. I'm Todd Bonlarron, here in the office of State Senator Tina Polsky. Senator Polsky, this year we saw a pretty record budget passed by the legislature, $116+ billion. What do you think were some of the more significant big picture items that were addressed in this year's legislative budget?
The one that I'm very pleased about, unanimously we passed affordable housing bill called the Live Local Act. And it's something that I know you and I have talked about for years. The county, all the folks, just whoever's watching, the county works so hard to help get affordable housing dollars back so we can build what we need. Palm Beach County notoriously is tough to live in and to be able to afford a home for working class people. So a huge chunk of the budget is going towards affordable housing projects. And I think the folks in Palm Beach County in the next several years will see the benefits of that. So I was very pleased about that. Good money put towards the environment, Everglades restoration. Healthcare, there's a lot of money always put into it, and they increased a program called Kid Care to be able to help children get health insurance that they need. But we do have a problem with people falling off the Medicaid rolls because of post-COVID rules, and I'm concerned about what's going to happen to them. So, always a lot of money for education, and even though more money is being put towards education, as I mentioned before, the way it's going to be divvied up is going to be problematic for our public schools. So there is a lot of money to go around. There's certainly things I'm not pleased about, big chunks of money, as I said, going toward immigrant flights, big chunks of money going towards defending lawsuits for unconstitutional bills. And when the government gets sued by folks like, for example, Disney, it has to be defended. And even though we have hundreds of lawyers, they seem to hire outside law firms at very high cost. So, it's not the most fiscally conservative budget I've seen, but I have to say I'm very pleased. I was able to bring back a lot of money to my district, District 30, Palm Beach and Broward County. And so, it's the good and the bad, like anything else.
So you sit on the Appropriations Subcommittee for Natural Resources and Environmental Approps, and you talked about the big picture issue of environment and some of the good funding that happened. You personally sponsored some legislation for the county, $3 million for the continuation of our Green K project in your district, which is probably one of our greatest accomplishments in the world of water reuse. Maybe talk a little bit about the importance of that and to the environment in our entire county.
Yeah, so we get a lot of rain, right?
Yep.
But how do we use that in a way that makes sense? And if we can turn the water around and reclaim and help fill our beautiful landscaping, our beautiful golf courses, our beautiful lakes like Green K, then we can really put it to good use. And so, one of the things that I loved about Green K is the educational aspect of it. And so to teach folks about the environment, I'd love to get students involved in learning. There's so many amazing new technologies that students can learn and work on in maybe a future career to fix our environment, because we've got a lot of issues going on. And so this is like, one bright light in that area.
Yeah, and I mean, this is going to be such a state-of-the-art facility, teaching kids on some of the most advanced technologies that are used to clean water and put it to great use. And we couldn't thank you enough for your part in doing that. We happen to be here in Boca Raton today, and I know that you put in some requests for the city of Boca Raton for some drinking water transmission lines, almost $1.5 million there as well. Again, what are your thoughts in terms of how the state can work locally with local governments to ensure that they have the resources they need to make sure that water quality is right, the transmission of those resources get to where they need to go to folks in the community?
Yeah, I mean, what could be more important than the quality of our drinking water, right? So it's a really interesting process. The members put in all kinds of requests from the cities that they represent, from local charitable organizations that are important to us. And so Boca Raton approached me about this appropriation. I was very happy to propose it and get it passed. And the state plays an important role. The local governments put in a large amount of money, and that's important when the state recognizes that the local government is heavily invested in it and it just need more money to help them get over the finish line, then that's where the state comes in. So it's a great partnership that we have, and it's really important that we always continue that great working relationship between local interests and the state for the betterment of all the citizens. And drinking water is right,
Yeah.
As we said, couldn't be more important.
One of the appropriations that you requested is to help empower at-risk foster students. To work with them, you received a little over $200,000 for that for an organization here in Boca Raton. How do you expect to see those dollars go to work in your community?
I couldn't be more proud of this organization, Best Foot Forward. I've actually been working with them long before I became elected. They help foster children in the public school system in all of Palm Beach County, all grades. They basically step in as like the surrogate parent. Not only do they get official tutoring, but they help them like if they get ready for college, do the things that a parent would normally do that these unfortunate children don't have. They have a 100% graduation rate. So to go to their program, to help this money to help their program, and I have to give a shout out to Boca West Children's Foundation. They support a different charity each year for an appropriations project, and this is the one they chose this year, and I'm so pleased that it made it to the finish line.
Two other appropriations that you were successful in obtaining were for the HAB Center, and working in the arts side and programming and education, arts and recreation, and then also on the other side in terms of integration of employment, $175,000 and $150,000 respectively. How do you hope that those dollars will go to work here in Palm Beach County?
So the Boca Rehabilitation Center, I guess it's called, but we call it Boca HAB, helps developmentally disabled adults work, have meaningful jobs. They work there. There's a nursery. There's like sort of a factory where they make and assemble different products. They have lots of different training classes, life skills, and it's an incredible, so every time I go, I get emotional. I just love going there and visiting with them. The folks that are working there are so happy to be productive and have something important to do. And they always love when we visit, and I love to go visit them. And they help train them for jobs and self-sustainability and life independence. So they're really incredible organizations that I'm so happy to help.
Yeah, there were a lot of vetoes this year in the budget, over $500 million that the governor vetoed. So it's nice to see some of these important issues get funded in your district. And it's great to end our program today on such a high note with some major accomplishments that you were able to provide, not just for your district, but for everyone throughout Palm Beach County. And we thank you very much for sharing some of those thoughts with us and spending some time with us today.
Thanks so much, Todd. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and we appreciate your time as well. I hope that some of the issues that Senator Polsky shared with you gave you a little more insight into the workings of Tallahassee, and also to some of the important issues that were on her agenda for the 2023 state legislative session. I'm Todd Bonlarron for everyone here at Politically Speaking. We'll see you next time.